And so can I begin? Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. My name's Kate Kleiber, and I'm going to go ahead and start. Let me pull up my PowerPoint for you. Here we go. Can we see that? Am I sharing screen? I am. Okay. All right. So you should be able to see my first PowerPoint slide. My name's Kate Kleiber, and I'm from SUNY GCC. Thanks for coming today. And I'm going to tell you about FLEXESOL, and I will share with you the lessons that I learned, the good, the bad, and the ugly about it, teaching English to speakers of other languages in HyFlex modality. And first thing I want to do is share with you what exactly FLEXESOL is and how it came about. So last year, when the pandemic started, the White House kept changing the rules for international students. And so at GCC, I work with international students teaching English to speakers of other languages. And every week it seemed like there was a different rule change. You know, you either must all be on campus or none of you are going to be on campus. Nobody's getting a visa. You know, it was crazy times with the pandemic. So we didn't know what was going to happen. And so I took the work of Dr. Brian Beatty, who invented HyFlex, and Dr. Helene Marshall, who invented the SOFLA, which is the synchronous online flipped learning approach. And I sort of melded them together because nobody was doing FLEXESOL. So I took the two, put them together, and there you have it. So I had a face-to-face component in case my students were on campus, an online synchronous component in case they were joining me live from another part of the world, and then the asynchronous. And this was risky for me because in my discipline, I'm not sure who's in the audience today, but teaching language asynchronously at my level is very risky and it goes against typical best practices. But I thought to myself, well, if I do it this way, no matter what happens with politics, nobody's going to shut me down. Because what was happening was, at other institutions, they were starting to say to their intensive English programs, well, we're just going to shut you down. We're just not going to do business. And that's it. So I wanted to stay alive. And so that's what drove me to create FLEXESOL. So for those of you who are not in my discipline, I might need to explain why asynchronous modality is problematic. And so this is basically, there's 4 skills in my discipline, reading, writing, and then listening and speaking, those 4. So to really do justice at my level, which is just prior to its college prep, pre-English 101 kind of ESL. So my students have to be really functioning authentically and communicatively at a high level very quickly. So asynchronous just isn't the best way to do it usually. So I just wanted to explain that. So let me go over the timeline of events. In March last year, that's when we all went remote. I'm sure you did too. You know, you found out one day, nope, you're not coming back on Monday. And then in April, our summer program was postponed first and then canceled. And then all the visa stuff started happening. So I had a discussion with Judy Littlejohn, who's also from GCC. She's an instructional designer, and she suggested HyFlex. So by May, as soon as my semester was done, I was doing graduate level training. I was reading everything I could read and getting my hands on everything I could find and going to meetings. And what I decided to do was a split shift. So I decided, because of the time zones that people were going to be joining me from, that if I taught early in the morning and then took a break in the afternoon, I would go home and take a nap. And then in the evening, I would log on again and teach that way. In July and August, it was more turmoil with the visas, the flip-flopping. And then by August, I started, and most of my students were joining me. I had students join me from 6 time zones, mostly synchronously, but there were some asynchronous. And I did have some students who were in the classroom. And so that was when FLEXESOL was practiced. And then I had my first results by December and trademarked it in December. The trainings that I did in order to do this included GCC professional development, and they did a fantastic job. Our folks with accessibility and the template for the HyFlex and all of that could not be beat. I can't say enough. I couldn't have done it without them. CPD trainings that I attended, included the SUNY Remote Teaching Clinic, Quality by Design, the SUNY Remote Teaching Institute, all kinds of webinars, anything I could get my hands on. In addition to that training, I also went to Oxford University press trainings. And this was crazy. It was absolutely wild. There were over 1,000 people in the first session. There were like 1,200 people from all over the world trying to get into these sessions. And I have a picture here of, not the Wild West like this, more the Wild West like this. It was just absolute chaos. The first day they crashed the system. But that was at the summer camp. But it worked out. And Oxford University did amazing things in that all of their sessions, there were concrete takeaways. They were like, try this. And there were really good concrete suggestions. So hopefully I'll have a few good suggestions to give you by the time you finish today with me. So it was like engaging and assessing your students online and teaching skills development in the online classroom, that sort of thing. And also here is where I picked up ideas for platforms and tools that I should be using in addition to Blackboard. In addition to the Oxford University training, I also needed to start training on different apps. So I found that Nearpod, PlayPosit, and Flipgrid were useful for the various different things that I needed to accomplish for my discipline in terms of the listening and speaking. That's where I was concerned. If you remember, I said that's where it was problematic. So Flipgrid allowed me to do some interesting things in the fall, especially in PlayPosit for listening comprehension. I'm going to keep that moving forward. It was a very good tool. Conversation Buddies is one of the things that I had to do outside of the classroom. So in a traditional environment, we would have a giant big pizza party with games and a DJ and break the ice the old-fashioned way with a party. But I couldn't do that under these conditions. So what I did was I created a set of activities in Flipgrid that people would do with their partner. And so it would be a native speaker partnered with one of my international students to do these activities. And they would go on virtual tours with, for example, Google Arts and Culture, ilovenewyork.com. They would visit different regions of New York. And actually, let me show you that. And so I should be able to go to, there we go. Yeah, ilovenewyork.com. And so, my students are always like coming from foreign countries thinking about New York City. And I'm like, no, there's this whole other part of the state. It's enormous. Yes? Oh, okay. I'm sorry about that. Hang on a second. I need to get back to the screen. Where are you? There's SUNY CIT. Okay. Okay. So turn my video off. Okay. Hopefully that'll help. How's it going now? Can everyone hear me? Okay. And I was showing I Love New York, but I don't have to show that screen. That's okay. As long as you can see my PowerPoint, that's really good enough. I was also going to share with you Flipgrid. Can you see the Flipgrid screen? Okay. So Flipgrid, this is just one of the buddies activities. You see the GIF or GIF there of Rihanna going, who's that? That was like, the day one activity. And then students would record little videos back and forth and comment to one another. And so that's what we did in the fall for them to talk to one another with Conversation Buddies. I should be back on the Conversation Buddies screen now. And we also had, everybody got a bling bag at the end of the semester. Can you see the PowerPoint? Okay, good enough. We'll work with that. So that was Conversation Buddies for fall, and it did work out. It wasn't the same as normal, but it worked out. In addition to this Conversation Buddies stuff, back to training, right? I also worked with New York State TESOL. The leadership had us all, they said, listen, every different region is going to put together some training, something that you know how to do, or find somebody who knows how to do something cool and teach it to the rest of us. And so there was just a ton of webinars that went out. And as co-chair of the Buffalo Rochester region, we hosted some sessions. But then I also watched a ton of things from other people and quite frankly stole a lot of fantastic ideas from the K-12 people. They were doing some really cool things in my discipline that I was able to adapt and use at higher ed. And so that was our conference poster from last year and for this year. This year I'm actually nominated for an award, so fingers crossed with that. And I'm still regional co-chair for Buffalo Rochester. In addition to New York State TESOL training, I also had a graduate intern last year who, when the pandemic started, she was scheduled to be doing live activities with the students. And then she was like, well, what do I do? And I had been wanting to start this SUNY Workplace group. If you're not familiar with SUNY Workplace, I'm not sure my audience today, SUNY Workplace is like Facebook, but for SUNY people. And so what I did was I created a SUNY Workplace group called the SUNY ESOL Professionals Network. And so I did have that queued up, but I think I'll skip it for the sake of, since there's lag time, I want people to be able to pay attention to the important content. But yeah, there is a SUNY Workplace group, and I have actually 38 members. I just checked, 38 current members. And so the graduate intern, what I had her do was go to all the different SUNY campuses and try and find the email addresses of anybody who might want to join, and then we invited them. So that allows me to post stuff that's going on with New York State TESOL, but also it's a place for specifically SUNY people, so higher ed folks who are teaching in my discipline, to ask questions, because a lot of us work very independently. And so this is nice to be able to coordinate. Other things that I did for spring 2021, I decided that Flipgrid was not good enough and that I needed more authentic communication. Because what happened was at the end of December, I realized that the students had a lag in their listening speaking, that they were not coming along as they should be. So I got together with the Learning Center, the tutors at my school, and used Discord, which I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but it's something that gamers use. But the Learning Center had actually started using it also. I'm not going to lie, we had some issues with it at first, onboarding people and then some audio issues. But once we got it down, it worked great. It really did. So we have tweaked it, and then for summer, we're all set to use it again. And I'm excited because I was happy with the results. We had small talk lesson plans, small group activities instead of one-to-one. People could just go at different times and log in, and there's different rooms. So if you have more people, you can, break people into smaller groups if you need to, but if not, you don't. It's very convenient and very authentic, to be honest with you. It's really not bad. So other things that I used to get people in here were I started using Google Docs, Google Drive, Google Sheets a lot more because it was easier for me to connect with my students because it removed that step of them having to go into Blackboard. And what happened is my attendance went up. So that's significant. I'll mention that again at the end of the presentation. So Discord and Google products. Now, in terms of results, I would like to go over that. The main thing you need to know is that ESL 100 is primarily a composition course designed to prepare non-native speakers for English 101. There is a strict exit exam. So my final grades for that course were pretty normal, but fewer completed the full year. And then Conversation Buddies participation was successful. Like I said, the move to Discord in spring was also helpful. And the course evaluations in general were positive. In terms of their language development, I would say it was a mixed bag, to be honest with you. The reading and writing, they were fine. Everything went normally. But listening, speaking, in December, I realized there was a lag. But by spring, like if somebody had started out in ESL 091 in fall and then took my ESL 100 in spring, if they were face-to-face or online synchronous, they did all right. their results were pretty normal. Predictably, I had negative results for the asynchronous students. And I did start emphasizing the need for synchronous participation in the spring. And actually, I'm bagging FLEXESOL and I'm renaming it hybrid for summer and insisting that they come to class and not just watch the videos. Other results I should mention is increased enrollment for my listening speaking class in spring. So it wasn't just me who realized that the listening speaking needed more work. The students themselves elected to take a class that was not mandatory in the spring to work on their listening speaking more, which was great. The Learning Center also offered more sessions in the springtime on Zoom and on Discord just for students to chat so that they had the opportunity to practice. I do have to mention specifically one population that fell behind greatly compared to the rest, and that's my Latino baseball players. Unfortunately, they were coming from Puerto Rico and Venezuela, and there was a combination of things. It wasn't just the language, it was also tech issues that were hampering them, and so they had lower performance rates on the whole. Now, I should also mention, in addition to teaching English to speakers of other languages, I also teach developmental English courses for native speakers. So in my native speaker courses, I did notice increased completion rates because I was doing the same kind of format. Students who were marginalized, who normally would sort of peter out at the end of a semester, I noticed because they had access to the Zoom lecture recorded, they were sticking with it. I had better an increase in completion rates, successful completion rates, significantly in the spring. I was happy to just recently receive the SUNY Chancellor's Award for Excellence in Scholarship and Creative Activities, so that was really nice. And I am considering a move to hybrid, synchronous and live modality permanently. I'm thinking about it. I've learned a lot this year. So in terms of suggestions, takeaways for you, regardless of your discipline, I would say call on your students, get them actively involved. I heard from a lot of colleagues that they felt last year like they were sort of talking to the wall, people's screens would be off. In my classes, I was using the best teaching ideas that I could to overcome those dark screens and muted mics. So my students knew that they could be called on at any moment. The breakout rooms, frequently changing the activities, encouraging the active participation in extracurriculars in addition to the classroom. My participation was fine. And I would say to all of you, Google Sheets, if you've got conferences, is a game changer. Google Drive, Google Docs, also helpful, but Google Sheets, if you need them to sign up and come on time, which in developmental courses, often people don't, that was an enormous game changer for me, rather than having them have to do that extra step of getting into Blackboard. And then also I would just say to everybody, consider recording your lectures or adopting the hybrid synchronous structure for basic courses, because there are good things about it, which is really, really nice. And at this point, I will ask if anybody has any questions and stop sharing. I'll turn my camera back on. Oh, I see people have their hands up. Okay. Discussion forum. Okay. Let me see. Okay. Is it working now with my camera on? I'm looking for questions. Also, if anybody wants to just shout one out, that's fine too. Oh, it looks like a bunch of people couldn't really join until midway. Sorry, what is it? Okay. Sure. Yes. Okay. So Flipgrid um, can be used for a number of different things. Celeste, what do you teach? Oh, I'm still freezing up. Celeste, what do you teach? I'll turn off my camera. Celeste, what do you teach? Oh, we're having some troubles with the tech, I guess. Um, can anybody else hear me? Oh, okay. So Maureen said that they couldn't hear Celeste's question. Sorry about that. Um, Celeste was asking about Flipgrid. And she teaches in the English department. Okay. So what I use this for was to have international students have communication with American students, native speakers, and they would do activities. They would go on a virtual tour together. So they would pick, say, hey, I'm going to go to the Strong Museum of Play in Rochester. And they would both go on the virtual tour, and then they would record little videos back and forth. Flipgrid is kind of like TikTok. And so they could record little clips and then watch each other's clips and respond to the clips. So it wasn't quite synchronous communication. It was asynchronous. You could do it no matter what the time zone was. That's why I did it that way in fall, because I didn't know how people were going to be able to connect easily, given the fact that some people were 14 hours away by time zone. I hope that helps. Did anyone else have any questions for me? We have just a few minutes left. Yep. The students generally rolled with it. They were really easygoing. I found that once they got used to it, they were all nervous about the technology, as most of us are. But then once we get into it and try it and get comfortable with it, it works out all right. But Flipgrid, it wasn't really as good as Discord. And so I see follow-up questions there. How did I use Discord and why did I choose Discord? So I chose Discord because of the Learning Center. The Learning Center was using it and they recommended it. We have somebody who's really into gaming, and so they were already familiar with it and a master of it. And then how we used that was we created what they call study nooks. They have study nook rooms. So it's to recreate the experience of getting together with people, because it's those hallway conversations that the students are missing, right? If you're only in class, you're not talking to one another outside of class. And Discord is a place where you can recreate that. So in the study nook rooms, we would put them in a voice room and then they could turn on their camera or not. We found out that most people, it's better if you keep your camera off, but if you turn the voice on, that worked really well. And so the audio was there and you can have a conversation back and forth. So that's why we chose the Discord, because that was what we really needed to practice. Someone asked, did we encounter privacy security concerns? The only security concerns that we ran into had to do with, we have a large number of students who are in the ACE program. So some of them are minors. And so there was a slight hurdle with that, but we were able to make it work, and we didn't have any have any problems with that. Students had the option to use their personal Discord accounts, and then they had to get into our Discord server, and so they had to be, prove that they were really GCC students. Otherwise, they couldn't be in there. And then, unless they were, special guests, like if I had a guest speaker or something, they'd be allowed for that one time. Or they could create a separate Discord account if they wanted to. It was up to them, but you had to be in there as a valid GCC, recognized GCC student in order to participate. So hopefully that answers the Discord questions. Mark Crosby wrote, Discord has voice channels for group discussions, posting areas, and screen sharing. It's like an LMS, but mainly used by the gaming communities. Yes, correct. And so it was the voice channels that we were using so that my students could practice talking to one another. Just for every day, not related to coursework. It was small talk. I had 4 different small talk lessons with a list of questions that I had gotten from something called Kathy's Cards. And so small talk group 1 was just for basics. And then small talk 2 was about music related. And then I had one that was sports related and one that was business related, and just lists of questions that people could refer to keep the conversation flowing. But if there was a lull or if it got awkward, they could refer back to that list. And if the conversation took a totally different turn, well, then so be it. That's okay, because the idea is to talk naturally. So it worked. Okay, I'm looking at our time. We've got about 3 minutes left. Does anyone have any other questions for me? And is this something that people can go back and watch later if they had trouble with the recording or with the live? Okay. Oh, that's good. Okay. With respect to Discord, do we have any concerns with accessibility and security? Okay, so that stuff is something that the Learning Center would be better prepared to answer than I am, because they were the ones that set it up. They were the ones who had ownership of it. I would have to ask Chelsea O'Brien. She runs our Learning Center. But I do know that accessibility is definitely an issue that we take very seriously at the college. And I didn't have any troubles with it this semester, but if there were issues for the future, we'd have to think about how to overcome that. I would have to refer to Chelsea for that. And security was not a problem, because students had to verify that they were students at the college. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gotten into our server. So that answers Michelle's question. Any further questions? I think we're just about at time. Thank you all for joining me. This was my first time doing one of these using on air. So I apologize for any technical issues that we encountered. Thank you so much for coming. I see a lot of familiar names. Yes, you too. Nice talking to you.